For more than 1,000 years, the kings and queens of Britain have held ceremonies like this, to reflect their power and glory, to show themselves to their people, to set themselves up as remote, mysterious beings. Sometimes simply, with spectacle and pageantry, to bring brightness in dark days. June the 2nd, 1953, the Coronation. The most solemn ceremony of all, the day Elizabeth II was crowned Queen. She rode to Westminster Abbey in a fairy tale coach. She was young, she was beautiful. For one man who organized the great spectacle, that day, a dream came true.
I thought, I'm having a marvelous dream. There were all those people in their beautiful clothes, the music out of this world. And the principal characters moving with supernatural dignity. Well, they were watching a fairy story, and a real one, not just make-believe. Because you see, men and women, they need food to eat and water to drink. But their imaginations are also desperately hungry for fairy stories. And this was one where the church and state working together, weaving the fabric of a single dream.
When royalty is involved, even paying the rent becomes a ceremony. This country estate in Hampshire was bought for the first Duke of Wellington by the grateful people of Britain, a gift for defeating the French at the Battle of Waterloo. Stratfield Say cost £600,000 in 1817. Today, for the present Duke, the rent is purely symbolic.
It's a silk tricolour with gold embroidery around the edge and swags, I think you call them, hanging from the top. And that part of it is the same each year, but it differs only in that the date is put on in gold lettering on the corner of each flag.
The rent is paid to the Queen at Windsor on the anniversary of the victory at Waterloo.
As soon as all the guests were there and the Queen had come in, a kneeling stool is placed in the middle of the floor. I then take the flag from the superintendent, walk forward, stop in front of the kneeling stool, bow, kneel, hand the flag up to the Queen, stand up, bow, and walk backwards. The moment that little ceremony is over, the flag is handed to the superintendent of the castle, who takes it to the guard chamber and places it over the bust of the first Duke of Wellington. It's a symbolic ceremony, as I have explained, but to me, it's a very important historical link between the Duke of the day, myself at the time being, and my ancestor, commemorating really, an event which took place now, whatever it is, 180 odd years ago, nearly 180 odd years ago. And I think it's a very interesting link with the past, and it gives one the opportunity to perhaps once again register one's gratitude as a family for what the nation gave to us in 1816.
The Queen's father, George VI, loved the Waterloo ceremony. She has continued to hold it since his death in February 1952. Prime Minister Winston Churchill led the nation in grief.
During these last months, the King walked with death, as if death were a companion, an acquaintance whom he recognized and did not fear. But the photographs of modern times have made vast numbers of his subjects able to watch with emotion the last months of his pilgrimage. We all saw him approach his journey's end.
The new Queen was in Kenya. Her father, christened Albert, had ruled as King George. Would she take a ceremonial name? Her private secretary wondered.
Well, we knew one thing, and it was this, that the first thing that had to happen was to find out what the Queen wished to be called on the throne. And so when I arrived at Sagana Lodge, I remember I came into the drawing room, or it wasn't a drawing room exactly, it was a sort of room that everybody sat in, and Prince Philip was in a sofa, I remember reading the Times, and the Queen was at the far end of the room, sitting very upright at her desk, rather high colour. And I sort of, did my bow and said, "I'm so sorry, ma'am, to hear about this." And she said, "Thank you very much." And then I went up to her, and she wanted to send off a couple of telegrams, personal matters, which she did, gave me. And I said, "Now, I've got to ask you something. First question is, what do you want to be called when you're on the throne?" "Oh," she said, "well, my own name, of course." So I sent a telegram off to say that the Queen wishes to be called Queen Elizabeth II.
The Queen flew back to London, and the slow, sad ceremonies of her mourning land. In the capital, the flags flew at half-mast. Every flag but one. Over her home at Clarence House, the royal standard had been broken out. From that day on, wherever she is in the world, the royal standard has marked the Queen's presence and power. Lance Sergeant Martin White.
There's only one Queen's flag man, and I'm the person who does the job, and I'm quite proud, to be selected to do this job. If you jump into a black cab, the cabbie will always point out the tourist that the Queen is in residence by seeing that royal standard. But first of all, I get it from my room, where it's been hanging up to dry, and then I bring it up to here, fold it out its full length, obviously top, bottom. Fold the bottom to the top. Then I will concertina it into a bundle, merely by going like that. Once I've got near to the end, I'll just roll it off, and that is the royal standard now ready for the Queen coming back to Buckingham Palace. I go up to the flagpole, which is right on the top of the roof. I'm already been informed by various members of the household of what time the Queen will be coming back to Buckingham Palace or on leaving. I then move to a position where I can see which way the Queen is going to approach from. On seeing the Queen's car coming in through either the north centre gate or south centre gate, I then go to pull the Royal Standard so it then flies in the wind.
Hyde Park, London. This is where the ceremonial year begins, with a 41-gun salute from the King's Troop of the Royal Horse Artillery. It marks the anniversary of the Queen's accession to the throne. The salute starts at noon. Calling the shots, Captain George Shapland.
Number 2 would have opened the breach. Number 4 actually rounds the round into the breach, and the number 2 then closes the breach.
Royal salute! Number 1! Forward! Number 2! Forward!
The number of shots is laid down by law.
Number 3! Forward!
Hyde Park rates 41 guns, 20 for London, 21 for the Crown. But the Venetian ambassador found chaos on a visit to London in 1707. Then superstitious belief or ammunition supplies determined the number of shots. 100 years later, rules were drawn up for salutes on land and sea.
Number 4! Forward!
I normally have the Regimental Sergeant Major standing behind me, who has a little leather wallet with 41 holes in it, and he presses a pin through each one as we fire each round, and he lets me know where we stand at each moment. And as we get to normally 39, he will say 2 more to go, 1 more to go, and last round.
Number 2! The Queen's Remembrancer.
Goldsmiths' Hall, a medieval court case in 20th century London. The trial of the Picts has been held every year since 1248. Its purpose? To test the coins of the realm. The money has been brought to the court from the Royal Mint in boxes. These were called picks in the Middle Ages. Coins must be chosen at random for laboratory testing. This is the job of the jury. Presiding over the trial is the Queen's Remembrancer.
The Queen's Remembrancer takes part because he's the last vestigial remains of the old Court of Exchequer. The record we have from the 13th century indicates that the coinage was tried by a jury in the presence of the barons of the Exchequer, who were the judges of the Court of Exchequer. It isn't simply the testing of the fineness of the coinage in the laboratory which needs to be gone into. The number of coins set aside must be tested, and that is a counting enterprise, hence perhaps the rather large number of jurors that we have. It is indeed in every way a trial, though the person in the dock is not a human being, but the coinage of the realm.
700 years old and still counting. Yet no one has improved on the trial of the Picts. The ancient ceremony remains the best guarantee that the coinage of Britain is sound in the modern world.
Good morning. I can now confirm to you that this morning I saw Her Majesty the Queen and sought her permission for a dissolution of Parliament and a general election on April the 9th.
The campaign can only begin after a chain of little-known ceremonies. In the bow room at Buckingham Palace, the Privy Council and its clerk await the first, the signing of the dissolution document by the Queen. At the House of Commons, the Speaker brings Parliament to a close.
We do, in Her Majesty's name, and in obedience to Her Majesty's command, prorogue this Parliament to Monday, the 23rd day of this instant March, to be then here holden, and this Parliament is accordingly prorogued to Monday, the 23rd day of this instant Parliament.
This looks like the dissolution. Mr. Speaker's retiring, so are other notable figures. But despite the fond farewells, this Parliament's not officially over yet.
The proclamation, the terms of the proclamation are actually approved in a meeting of the Privy Council, and at that meeting the Queen signs the proclamation itself, and this is the document which the Queen has just signed. From here I take this to an office in the House of Lords, which is called the Crown Office, which is where the Great Seal is kept. And in that office, the Great Seal, in fact in its wafer form, will be affixed to the proclamation. And at the moment that the seal is actually affixed to the proclamation, it then takes effect, and Parliament, both houses, are dissolved.
No law is valid without the Great Seal. Monarchs guard it jealously. Richard I's Chancellor drowned trying to save it in a shipwreck. Rebels stole Edward II's. With it, they hoped to seize his throne. Edward III made counterfeiting the Great Seal high treason. Charles I was bitterly fought over in the English Civil War. To prevent George III dissolving Parliament, politicians stole it. But the king went ahead, after ordering a new one. Today, John Bartrip is the sealer of the realm.
It's a bit of an honour, really, I should think. I mean, to think that you've sealed a document which virtually, has put, there's no government anymore. So, so it's quite something, really.
In Edinburgh, the election is proclaimed with pomp and pipes. But 3 days late, Scotland's senior herald, Lord Lion, King of Arms, knows why.
Well, in the past, it took nearly 3 days for a galloper to come with a proclamation from London, and that is why it's often made roughly 3 or 4 days later in Edinburgh. One wears the tabard to make the proclamation because by putting on the royal arms, which almost indicate that one's part of the royal presence, one's individual persona disappears and one takes on the persona of the sovereign. So in a sense, you speak with the sovereign's voice. The origin of this can be traced back into the far period of history on the time of the pharaohs in the Upper Nile, when the mask of Horus was placed over the person's head, and he then spoke with the voice of the incarnate sovereign. We make it, I think, so that people are in the middle of this frenetic time of an election with rival manifestos and all the razzmatazz of an election. And I think they like to pause for a moment and reflect on the constitutional position and be reminded perhaps of the struggle to get the vote and how really serious is their action in the election later on. By the Queen, a proclamation for dissolving the present Parliament and declaring the calling of another. Elizabeth Regina. Whereas we have thought fit, by and with the advice of our Privy Council, to dissolve this present Parliament, which stands prorogued this day to Monday, the 23rd day of March. We do for that end publish this our royal proclamation, and do hereby dissolve the said Parliament accordingly.
Spring drills at Chelsea Barracks, London. Showing their paces are young officers from the Grenadier Guards. This is their first training for trooping the colour in June. One man has been singled out. Second Lieutenant Justin Hunt Davis. 21 and straight from Sandhurst, Justin's been chosen to be the ensign, the soldier who carries the colour.
Knees up. This way, Thompson, sir. All together.
The square bashing is rigorous, but Justin has barely 2 months to learn the special drill for the ensign.
I think I'm very honoured to carry the colour. It's always something I thought I might do over the past couple of years when I knew that my regiment would be trooping the colour. And I always hoped it would be me. Obviously, so many people watching me, very, very chuffed. I've got to try and build up the old muscles, shoulders and arms, because carrying the colour for a long period of time, you have to carry it sort of in a set position, and after a bit, it's very, very hard work. I was lying in bed last night thinking I didn't want it to happen, because it's so much more fun waiting for it to happen and being excited about it, and the sort of feeling of deflation when you've done it and that you're never going to do it again, and it's the one moment really, I think, in my army career that I will remember above everything else, because it's such an honour. So I'm very, very excited about the day.
The election result. This heralds more ceremony.
We won tonight a magnificent victory. A victory that many people thought was beyond our grasp, but one which the Conservative Party always believed was there for the taking.
Yeah. Well done.
4 days later, a Privy Council's been called to swear in new government ministers. The clerk, Sir Geoffrey de Denny, handles last-minute queries.
Well, it's just the sort of clothes that she would wear ordinarily if, for example, she was invited to a lunch at the palace. And it's what she feels most comfortable in. I mean, if, for example, she usually wears a hat on an occasion like that, well, by all means do so, but it's not necessary.
Britain's rulers have met with their ministers in private councils since earliest times. Though in 900 years, there have been some changes. Today, to complete business quickly, councillors are no longer allowed to sit down at meetings, a time-saving scheme ordered by Queen Victoria. This Privy Council at Buckingham Palace, members of the new cabinet must kiss the Queen's hand. Only then can they get on with the business of government. Once again, Sir Geoffrey de Denny is Master of Ceremonies.
excited, I think, is the best way I can describe the atmosphere at this sort of meeting. Many ministers are taking up new offices that they very much wanted to be involved in for the first time. They are meeting each other for the first time after a fairly grueling election. They have a lot to say to each other. They want to know what the ceremony is about. They all have very much individual views about what's going to happen. And it's a question of trying to reduce this, sometimes rather chaotic assemblage, to a degree of order that finishes with a line of ministers in the right order, ready to go into the Queen in a proper, seemingly dignified way and complete proceedings.
That same week, at Chester Cathedral, one of the great set pieces of the ceremonial year, the service of Royal Maundy, held on the Thursday before Easter. Since the 12th century, the kings and queens of Britain have followed Christ's example with a public show of humility. Originally, they washed or kissed the feet of the poor. Later, monarchs like Elizabeth I also gave purses of money. Foot washing was eventually abandoned because of fears of the plague. In the 18th century, Maundy recipients still had to be old and poor. Now they are chosen for their work with local churches.
When I had the invitation that I was actually going to meet the Queen and receive the Maundy money, it just seemed to be beyond my wildest dreams. I didn't think it could happen to people like me.
The postman knocked me up at 7 o'clock one morning and answered the door to him. And there he was with a letter there, and he didn't like putting it through the door. He couldn't bend it, and it had Buckingham Palace on the back of it, so that set me wondering. When I opened it and found out what it was, feelings I was over the moon.
The yeomen of the guard are in charge of Maundy security. They carry the dishes aloft because it's an old tradition. This dates back to the days when food was also distributed. It had to be kept out of reach of the hungry crowds.
A very great lady is coming to us to symbolically give to us in the same way that Jesus gave to his disciples. He didn't wait for people to come to him. He went to find them, and he went to give to them. And this is how it seems to me that the Queen is doing so on Maundy Thursday.
The service dwells on the themes of humility and love. Readings include the Mandatum, Christ's command for everyone to love one another. It's from Mandatum that Maundy gets its name. The Queen will distribute 2 purses. In the red one, there's ordinary money for food and clothing. In the white, the special Maundy coins. Mercia Tapsell and Bert Sandbach are among the 132 recipients, 1 man and 1 woman for every year of the Queen's age.
great privilege to really be holding this money and to feel that I've got this to keep. I had a simply wonderful day. It's really surpassed anything that I ever thought. I didn't ever think that I should be in the cathedral with the Queen and with all the dignitaries that were there, and the singing, the organ, the Queen, just everything and everybody. It's really been out of this world.
This in the white purse is the real Maundy money. And that's the 1 penny, 2 penny, the old 3 penny and the 4 penny. And those are complete sets. And there's, the amount of each set is equal to 10 pence. And for the Queen's age, we get 1 penny for each year of her age, which is 66. So all in all, there's 66 pence. And each set is made up separately, you see. It's a very, very high honour. I never thought anything like this. I very much appreciate it. I've enjoyed the day. And as I say, to even be in the presence of the Queen has meant a lot. And receiving this is a thing I shall never forget, ever. It's really wonderful.
Another role for the Queen, another ceremony. At Plymouth, as the Navy's Lord High Admiral, she's commissioning a new warship. Her badge of office, the Verge, will be carried before her, when Brian Hambley's mastered the art with a mop handle.
Okay, Verge, remember, a nice swift movement of the arms, the legs, head nice to the front. We'll do it without even looking down. It's Verge, Verge, ho! Very nice, swift. Okay, stand properly, relax at ease. Stand by, Verge, Verge, ho! This time, remember to crispen it up. Head nice up, chest, and we feel proud. The Queen's going to be there, we've got to feel proud. So it's stand by, sit, stand by, ho!
I joined the Navy in September 1983 as an artificer apprentice, and I was then promoted up through the ranks, reaching the rank of Chief Petty Officer before being promoted to midshipman.
Head nice to the front, and standing properly at ease.
I've done now my allotted time as a midshipman, and therefore become promoted to sub-lieutenant today. And so the uniform had to be delivered very, very quickly to enable me to wear it on the day, and it's just arrived this morning.
The Verge is a silver mace, made in the reign of Charles I. The King gave it to be carried in battle before his Lord High Admiral, the Duke of York, who became James II.
I'm quite nervous about today, as it's a very important occasion. I don't want to drop the Verge or do anything that might sort of compromise it, as it's quite a valuable piece of antiquity.
The Queen became Lord High Admiral after reforms to the Royal Navy in the 1960s. As well as the Verge, her Lord High Admiral's flag is on parade to mark HMS Lancaster's big day.
My job's basically to precede the Queen around the entire parade and onto the ship and into the ship as a badge to allow people in front of the Queen to know that she's actually proceeding through the parade and to stand by ready for her presence as she arrives. What will be going through my mind as I precede the Queen on the parade will be not to get too far ahead. It's very difficult to see what's happening behind you when you're carrying the Verge, and it's perhaps inappropriate to look back over your shoulder. So it's more a matter of educated guesswork. Also, my wife and children will be in the stand, so I've got to be very careful not to be too conscious of them as I walk around as well. It's a very special day for them.
As a final touch of ceremony, a veteran Lancaster bomber salutes its new namesake. It's the morning of the state opening of Parliament. The imperial state crown and the other regalia that will be used in the ceremony are off to Westminster. The Queen cannot join them till later. Outside the Houses of Parliament, MP Sidney Chapman sets off the opposite way, to be held hostage at Buckingham Palace for the safe return of the Queen. As the Crown jeweller places the crown on its special stand in the coach, Sidney Chapman, the hostage, ponders a less glittering fate.
I went in a car with the other two household officers, and the normal route through Parliament Square and down the Mall. I felt quite important, and I made quite sure that I arrived with plenty of time to spare, because of course the Queen can't leave the palace until I arrived.
Taking an MP hostage is a long-established precaution.
I think it goes back to the mid-17th century, of course, when Parliament effectively chopped off the head of a monarch. And since then, monarchs haven't much liked going to Westminster. And so they insisted on having, I would like to think, some important personage from Parliament to be her safekeeping until she returns. My other two colleagues were part of the procession. So they returned with Her Majesty to Westminster, but I was the hostage at the palace.
At the palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh, the piper plays at dawn only for the monarch. But in this case, it's not the Queen, but the Lord High Commissioner of the Church of Scotland. For the week of its General Assembly, he lives exactly like the Queen. This year, it's Lord Macfarlane of Bearsden.
Only the Queen ranks above the Lord High Commissioner in Scotland during the period of the Assembly. And the reason for that, as I'm sure most people must know, is that the Church of Scotland do not recognise the Queen as their head. They only recognise God as their head, but they certainly will accept the Queen sending a commissioner to be her representative. I'm surrounded, but not by a court. It's called a suite, and the suite consists of a senior lady in waiting and 2 other ladies in waiting, and then, of course, representatives, equerries from the services, one from the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, and then, of course, the Palace Guard, and this year it was the Scots Guards who were on parade, over 100 Scots Guards, which was absolutely marvellous. And that is the suite.
Holyrood's fountains only ever play for the Queen or her commissioner.
Well, the Lord High Commissioner is in fact the Queen. He acts in the same capacity as the Queen would. He is not part of the General Assembly. He is really an onlooker. He attends the Assembly for part of the day. The Assembly doesn't start until he arrives every morning. And his function is to make sure that he reports to the Queen at the end of the Assembly about anything which would interest her, as well as to make sure, of course, that he presents himself because he is there in an official capacity as the Queen. The Lord High Commissioner and his wife are addressed as His and Her Grace, and the reason for that is that Scottish kings were called His Grace in the past, and so that's really the reason for it. And they understand that they should curtsy in the same kind of way, and in general, they understand the protocol, and there was never any great problem about it. In fact, rather the reverse. We found that people are very pleased to enter in to the traditions and the protocol of the office. Well, that was a lovely visit. A lot of nice bits.
I think they're very comfortable.
The closing of the Assembly brings to an end his royal status.
May I say thanks to all those who have received Her Grace and I and the members of our suite so warmly during what has been for us a very happy and a very stimulating week.
When we came out of the building where the Assembly is held, the car had number plates on it again, having had no number plates during the week. The Royal Standard had disappeared, but the biggest shock of all was when we got back to the Palace of Holyrood House, the Scots Guards had disappeared. It really was like Cinderella, and it was the most extraordinary anticlimax.
All the officers walk across St James's Park. There's no drill involved. And you then walk across Horse Guards Parade, and we all congregate underneath the arch on Horse Guards Parade, where we all get our dress sorted out, and the Garrison Sergeant Major sorts us out, so we're ready to get onto parade.
Time has marched on. Today, at the Queen's Birthday Parade, Justin Hunt Davis will, at last, troop the colour.
I got under the arch at Horse Guards, and the Queen's umbrella orderly for that day, who was a Lance Sergeant in support company, had got my colour belt, which is the thing I panicked about more than most, because I had no control over it until it was under the arch. Anyway, he grinningly gave me the colour belt, and then kindly helped me put it on amid much laughing from everybody. I seem to remember a few of the officers were there as well, pulling bits of tunic and threads and bits of button away from me. And we all had a good laugh while this Sergeant Hill put the colour belt on me. I seem to remember, just after putting the colour belt on, my father appeared. He was going across Horse Guards to go and sit and watch the parade. I seem to remember him shaking my hand in a very formal way, and wishing me good luck. It was probably the most nervous I felt, because there was something very formal about it, which was quite unlike my father.
Other end, we are sitting watching an extremely
Today, trooping the colours is simply a military showpiece, but 200 years ago it had a practical purpose. In the heat and confusion of battle, the colour served as a rallying point. So soldiers needed to know what it looked like.
Sergeant Major salutes the colour, and it's the only time a warrant officer will salute with a sword. He then gathers the colour, marched forward and presented me with the colour. And it's at this moment I knew that all the cameras were on me, and that was the focal point of the whole parade. It's one of the parts of the parade that everybody knows and thinks about almost more than any other part, is when the Sergeant Major presents the ensign with the colour. So, although I wasn't especially nervous at the time, because I'd done it so often, and there was more to come which I was more worried and nervous about, I knew that it really was very, very important that it was done properly. It was actually a very exciting moment.
The parade reaches its climax when the ensign takes the colour to his fellow soldiers. He carries, or troops, the colour through their ranks, slowly enough for each man to remember the flag's markings.
To me, the most exciting and the most picturesque moment of the whole of the Queen's birthday parade is when the colour is lowered in slow time to Her Majesty. We slow march up first, obviously, as the escort, and then come on to what's called the saluting line, where the captain of the escort will give an eyes right. And when he gives an eyes right, the colour is lowered so it is horizontal to the ground. At this point, the Queen will bow her head to the colour because it's been consecrated, and it is the colour being lowered to the sovereign as a sign of respect. It is saluting the sovereign. It is a splendid scene with the dust, and on a very hot day you can always remember all the metal jangling and the horses' hooves and the sounds of the mass bands of the household cavalry. So it really is a wonderful sight. Obviously though, by that stage we were all very, very hot, wearing these very heavy tunics, and I was actually beginning to feel slightly ill. I'd stopped sweating, and I was beginning to feel slightly nervous that I'd actually not last throughout the rest of the parade. But if you have to stand there for a long period wearing very uncomfortable hot clothes, there's nothing more wonderful than standing there and being able to hear, if not see quite, the household cavalry going past the sovereign.
The Monday of Royal Ascot Week at Windsor Castle, the traditional date for the annual procession of Britain's most exclusive order of chivalry. The Order of the Garter honours the country's most illustrious men and women. Edward III was inspired to found the order in 1348, when it said a lady's garter fell off at a ball. Then, as now, no more than 26 knights were appointed. The most solemn rite of the day is the investiture, when the sovereign herself dresses new knights in their robes and insignia. A few paintings exist of this once private ceremony, but it has never been filmed until now. The Garter Throne Room in Windsor Castle. The original Black Rod and Garter King of Arms were appointed to run the order in the 15th century. Today, their successors lead the Queen's procession.
Garter and Black Rod, pray summon the companions elect.
3 new knights have come to be invested. One is the former Prime Minister, Sir Edward Heath.
My lords and ladies, pray be seated.
As custom demands, Sir Edward has chosen 2 other members of the order to help with the ritual.
The Right Honourable Sir Edward Richard George Heath.
The 2 knights of the Garter who supported me were Lord Carrington. The other one was Lord Callaghan, who was formerly the Labour Prime Minister, who also I've known for many, many years, and we've always got on perfectly well together. I thought it was a very suitable thing that on the Garter I shouldn't be politically biased, but that I should have supporters from the 2 main parties. Well, the Garter is held there on a cushion, and the Queen takes the Garter and then hands it to the page. The page then kneels down and places it round your leg, just beneath the knee. While this is going on, then the bishop, who is the chaplain to the order, reads out the historical injunction to knights as to how they should behave, what they should do, and how they serve the monarch and the country.
Into which thou shalt be engaged, thou mayest stand firm, valiantly fight, courageously and successfully conquer.
And then she takes the sash, which is a superb, rich, dark blue color, and she places it over the left shoulder. The Garter, along with the Order of the Knight of the Thistle, is they're the only 2 which are placed over the left shoulder of all the honours in this country.
St. George.
She takes the star and pins it on the jacket on one's breast.
Both prosperous and adverse encounters, that having slightly...
The Queen, with the help of one's sponsors, one on the right and one on the left, puts the gown around one. They help to lift it up, and then she takes it from the front, one side in each hand, and then finally folds it round one.
In augmentation of thine honour, ennobled with the shield and red cross of our Lord, by whose power thou mayest safely pierce troops of thine enemies, and be over them ever victorious. Thou mayest obtain eternal and triumphant joy.
When I was standing in front of the Queen, I felt how important she is and the monarchy is to our country. She was symbolic of everything which had gone before, and she fulfills that purpose magnificently. So I couldn't help feeling at the time that this was for me very humbling, but at the same time honourable occasion.
Holyrood House, Edinburgh. On garden party duty, the Royal Company of Archers. They're the Queen's bodyguard in Scotland. Though with only bows to defend her, their role is now only symbolic. But away from the ceremonial, the company stays true to its origins. It holds archery competitions. The top award, the Queen's Prize, has been won by Walter Simpson.
Are you on duty as well? I've got today. Are you?
No, ma'am. I was not. My name did not come out of the hat for this year's run. So I'm relieved to duty. Not that it actually means. I actually don't mind being on duty. I quite enjoy it.
Good.
So,
because it's quite a long stand. That,
well,
isn't it?
Yes, for the old ones, but many more young now, which is very good.
Well, some of the older ones find it almost easier to do than the younger ones, don't they? Well, this is what you've chosen. So you've got all the right things on it, Terry.
Thank you very much. Well, I did inspect it.
Did you?
So I hope it is all correct. And this is a piece of family silver anyway.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, that's rather nice, isn't it?
Which my father was sufficiently generous to pass on to me on this auspicious occasion.
Oh, I see. And maybe what did you say? He won it
3 times.
3 times, did he? And your
Father has
brothers?
3.
And my brother has won it once.
So quite a bit of competition.
Isn't it? Yes.
I've been trying to catch up.
Not quite a monopoly yet with the Simpson family.
But it's still quite a popular thing to do. I've only tried
extremely popular
once. I hurt myself considerably.
Yes.
Doing that. But I did actually hit the target, which is, I gather, sometimes quite difficult.
Well, that is a great achievement.
But obviously I hadn't got the very long one. I think I got something slightly smaller. Well, anyway, there you are. That's. I'm very glad to give you that. And many congratulations.
On the River Thames, 4 men in a boat. They're in search of the Queen's swans. The ceremony, known as swan-upping, has evolved from the needs of the past, when swan meat was eagerly sought after to supplement winter food rations. So each bird was jealously guarded and bore its owner's mark. Captain John Turk is keeper of the Queen's swans.
Swan-upping means picking up the swans, all the newly hatched cygnets that is, and marking them according to ownership. 2 of the City and London livery companies are owners of swans in conjunction with the Queen. They are the Worshipful Company of Vintners and the Worshipful Company of Dyers. Well, now, of course, it is really only a traditional ceremony, but of course we do monitor the health of all the swans, certainly on the River Thames in the area that we cover for swan-upping. We surround them with our 6 boats. That's 2 for the Queen, 2 boats for the Vintners Company, 2 boats for the Dyers Company. We surround them up against the nearest bank to which they're swimming, and then we catch them with our bare hands. Pull them into the boats or perhaps on the shore, and smother the parent birds, that is, with our knees so the wings don't flap too much because they're very dangerous. Tie them up, and then we capture the cygnets after that. Examine the beaks of the parent birds to find out the markings on them, and then mark the cygnets accordingly. I wouldn't have been doing it for 30 years if I hadn't enjoyed it. No, I thoroughly enjoy the whole thing, yes, and have done for years now. I've been the Swan Master now to the Queen for 30 years, and I was swan-upping for 10 years before that at least.
Swan-uppers upstanding! Swan-uppers! Good! The Queen! The Queen! Savior of the Swan!
The Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. For young army officers, the Sovereign's Parade marks the end of a year's training. David Livingston has won the Sword of Honour for Best Cadet. He now stands on the threshold of a military career.
Well, the first time I actually stood on those steps was 15 months previously when I first arrived at Sandhurst. And the very thought of even going up the steps seemed such a long way away that it would probably never happen. And so to be actually walking up the steps, also carrying the Sword of Honour, was almost incomprehensible at the time.
The Sovereign's Parade starts a chain of ceremonies. Beyond the hallway lies the door to the wider world of regimental life. The tensions of training can at last be left behind. Slamming the doors marks the end of the course. But not before Blitz, the adjutant's horse, has also come in. It's been a tradition at Sandhurst since a rain shower drove everyone to take cover in 1927.
Work. 1 year's work.
One tradition is just as soon as you've taken your boots off, just to launch them into the air. They come down to the earth with a satisfying crump as the polish cracks. Going into the quartermaster's stores this time was a far more pleasant experience than the first time. This time was to get rid of all my kit.
2 cap edges.
No, just the one.
Just the
one broke. It's a nice feeling though, because you got rid of your Sandhurst uniform, where you were just another cadet at Sandhurst, and you can actually look forward to getting your own uniform in your own regiment, which is, well, you're probably more proud of that than the Sandhurst one.
At the ball that night, there's one final ceremony for the graduates to go through, unveiling the pips on their shoulders that mark their new status as officers.
When the first firework went up on the stroke of midnight, I was flanked either side by my sister and a great friend, both poised to pull ribbons off my shoulders to signify that I'd actually become an officer. All I can remember was smiling, thrilled to bits inside that I'd achieved my ambition.
For some older soldiers, uniform also looms large. Lord Aylesford is the Lord Lieutenant of the West Midlands. Today he's dressing for a royal visit and a complicated schedule.
The uniform is basically the Army Blue Patrol, with different badges, of course, with a broad stripe for Lord Lieutenants, a slightly narrower stripe for Deputy Lieutenants, and sword slings and a sword with a Mameluke hilt, it's that one, and spurs, which I fight over. I see absolutely no point in wearing spurs nowadays, particularly if I'm going around a factory, which is not the ideal place for wearing spurs in. However, I'm ruled out of order. And then of course, the army hat with scrambled eggs on the front. The program is all produced, and it's then been reduced in size till it fits my hat. And as time goes on, I move around and put it back in the hat, so I can always look into my hat and see how far we've got and how we should do next.
Once, Lord Lieutenants were powerful military figures. All the troops in the county were under their command. Today, their duties are ceremonial. They represent the Queen and greet royal visitors on her behalf. The The Lord Lieutenant's job is to smooth the princess's path through a series of visits in Birmingham.
We meet them at the airport and hand them into their car, follow on, and when we get to the first venue, I leap out and present the first few people. I have to be there close behind her at that point because occasionally people do dry up. And then you are there looking, as you say, look in your hat and say, you can slide forward and say, well, of course, I know Mr. Snooks terribly, terribly, terribly well. May I present this one?
Can I also
The princess's program includes an engagement on behalf of one of her charities.
the work which you do for charities and for Turning Point in particular. Pull one of those things so that we...
Next, the now traditional walkabout.
Nowadays, of course, enormous quantity of flowers. And so that we normally have a couple of police ladies, and they're handed, the flowers are handed over to the lady in waiting, if there is one. Very well, nice. Thank you so much for everything.
Very much indeed.
Did a wonderful day.
Thank you. We haven't made you too late.
No, it's fine, thank you.
Thanks very much indeed.
One talk on that. It's been a good day. Now, scat cars. I'm enjoying them immensely, but I always do. And the amount of voluntary work being done is absolutely unbelievable. And really, it was almost reduced to tears in one or two places. And I know that it's been a marvellous day, and she is so good at it.
Glastonbury, Somerset. At St John's Churchyard, the townspeople are choosing Christmas presents. They grow on Britain's strangest thorn tree.
And every year, we send sprigs of thorn to the Queen and the Queen Mother.
The thorn is said to have sprung from the staff of Joseph of Arimathea, the man who arranged Christ's burial. According to legend, he came to Glastonbury with 12 disciples. Local schoolchildren cut the sprigs.
Now look, there's a lovely one there. Do you think you can cut that off with your hands very carefully? Well, I'll hold it, you cut it. Cut! Yes! Well done. Let's put that one in the basket.
Sending the sprigs to royalty is an ancient tradition which the people of Glastonbury continue because they enjoy it.
Look, I thought that this one here is lovely. Can you manage those? Do you think you can cut that just through there? Go. Hard. Well done. Thank you. That's beautifully done.
The ceremony has survived, like the thorn itself. When a 17th century Puritan tried to cut down the original tree, the thorn struck back. A splinter flew out and killed him.
In a minute, we're going to pack up the sprigs of thorn and take them to the post office and send them to the Queen so they'll be ready with her on Christmas Day.
Could we post the parcel to Her Majesty the Queen, please? There we are. Thank you. And a parcel of the Holy Thorn to Her Majesty the Queen Mother. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
The next morning, the thorn has reached the Queen's audience room in Buckingham Palace.
Oh, nice to see it. Thank you.
With the thorn comes a letter from the people of Glastonbury. It sends love, gratitude, and Christmas greetings to Her Majesty. At the Tower of London, not even the festive season stands in the way of the ceremony of the keys. It's a crucial part of the system to protect the crown jewels which are housed here. Every night, the military guards are joined by yeoman warders like John Mayer.
The ceremony begins at precisely 7 minutes to 10 when I leave the Bywood Tower carrying the lantern and the Queen's keys. We proceed along Water Lane to the Bloody Tower where the escort has formed up.
Escort to the keys, by the centre. Quick, march!
I hand the lantern to the unarmed soldier who carries it throughout the ceremony. I then fall in between the two lead escorts, and the sergeant who commands the whole escort steps off the party, and we march to the middle tower where the gates in the middle tower are swung shut, locked and secured for the night. The huge hasps and locks are swung in and locked by the keys.
Escort to the keys, inward, turn! Escort to the keys, please aid, off! Escort to the keys, go, off! Escort to the keys, outward, turn! Escort to the keys, by their centre, quick, march!
700 years of uninterrupted history. It's the oldest military ceremony in the world. But no one has found a better way of ensuring the tower is locked and possible thieves repulsed.
Halt! Escort to the keys! Halt! Who comes in?
The keys.
Whose keys?
Queen Elizabeth's keys.
Pass Queen Elizabeth's keys, and all's well. Escort to the keys, by the centre. Quick, march!